Good evening, I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the NewsHour tonight, a roller coaster day on Wall Street as President Trump holds firm to his tariffs and threatens more.
We speak with business owners concerned about how the president's economic policies will affect their bottom lines.
And in the face of escalating threats, Taiwan works to prepare its citizens for a potential invasion by China.
We all need to protect the safety of this land and the way of life we have here. And that way of life is a free, democratic one.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions, and friends of the NewsHour, including Leonard and Norma Chlorfine, and the Judy and Peter Bloom Kovler Foundation.
Certified financial planner professionals are proud to support PBS NewsHour. CFP professionals are committed to acting in their clients' best interest. More information at letsmakeaplan.org.
It really matters when you have an opportunity to give back.
Being part of something that's bigger than myself, that's what brings me happiness.
Being able to integrate your professional career with some of these other things that are important to you, it's critical to be happy at the end of the day.
You know, this is our community too, and we want to participate and give back to it.
People want those opportunities to make an impact and a difference.
The Ford Foundation, working with visionaries on the front lines of social change worldwide. And with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. It was a day of wild swings on Wall Street as investors and businesses sought clarity about the scope of new tariffs and how long they might last.
President Trump and his team sent conflicting messages again, including a threat by the president to ramp up much larger tariffs of 50% against China. By day's end, the Dow finished a bit down, just under 1%. The Nasdaq finished just above break even, and the S&P 500 was down about 0.2%. But turmoil and confusion over the president's goals defined much of the day. Lisa Desjardins has our report.
The opening bell on Wall Street, the sound of alarm, with stocks bungeeing wildly in the first hours and traders not able to find a foothold in President Trump's tariff war. The economic issues are complicating diplomatic ones, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived at the White House.
Mr. President, will you discuss tariffs on Israel?
Reporters shouted questions after the two leaders canceled their formal news conference together. Netanyahu's war-battered economy now faces a new 17% tariff from the U.S.
But we had great discussions today.
In the Oval Office, Israel's leader said his country will meet Trump's economic demands.
We will eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, a variety of trade barriers that have been put up unnecessarily.
The president used the opportunity to dig in on tariffs.
This is America first. It's now America first. And we didn't put America first. We put America last.
Trump actually upped the stakes, threatening China on social media with another 50% tariff if the world's second largest economy does not back off its reciprocal tariffs by tomorrow. This as words of warning are growing more urgent. Across the Atlantic, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen accused the U.S. of economic bullying and said it is now talking with other trading partners.
So it's very clear that we are open for negotiations. and that in parallel we are preparing a potential list for retaliation and other measures for retaliation if this is necessary. We prefer to have a negotiated solution.
Back on Wall Street, billionaire Trump backer and hedge fund manager Bill Ackman urged Trump to delay large tariff deadlines, writing, "Otherwise, we are heading for a self-induced economic nuclear winter, and we should start hunkering down." And J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon warned the bank's investors of higher prices in the short term, and adding, whether or not the menu of tariffs causes a recession remains in question. This after a morning of whiplash on the markets, first plunging and then a sudden rise back into positive territory based on a social media-fueled rumor. National Economic Council Chief Kevin Hassett was asked this on Fox News.
Will you do a 90-day pause? Would you consider that?
The president is going to decide what the president's going to decide. So the idea that it's going to be a nuclear winter or something like that is completely irresponsible rhetoric.
Some on social media mistakenly proclaimed a 90-day tariff freeze was coming, leading to a sudden positive spike that quickly disappeared. To the idea of a 90-day pause, today Trump himself told reporters,
"Well, we're not looking at that. We have many countries that are coming to negotiate deals with us, and they're going to be fair deals."
That seemed to contradict with other words of Trump's advisors, including Counselor Peter Navarro yesterday on Fox.
This is not a negotiation.
Today, the president was asked,
"You're talking about negotiations, and yet others in your administration are saying that these tariffs are actually permanent. What is the action?"
Well, it could be. They can both be true. There can be permanent tariffs, and there can also be negotiations.
A few on Trump's team have repeated a more specific phrase about the length of the tariffs.
They are definitely going to stay in place for days and weeks. That is sort of obvious. The president needs to reset global trade.
The effect on global trade long term is not yet clear, but the world's stock markets continue to reset to red. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Lisa Desjardins.
U.S. businesses are already facing tough challenges as a result of President Trump's sweeping new tariffs.
We spoke with small business owners across the country to hear how they are being affected firsthand. Here's some of what they told us.
I'm Wendy Brew. I own Dry Ridge Farm in Madison County in western North Carolina. It'll affect us on everything from fertilizer to construction materials to tractors, new equipment. But not just new equipment, like tractor parts. All farmers do their own maintenance on their equipment.
My name is Peter Andrews. I'm the founder of Culture Wine Company, an importer, wholesaler, and focused on South African wine. Right now, I have a container that's leaving South Africa. That alone will probably be tariffed just because I missed it by about a 7-hour window to get it out.
Hi, my name is Sunny Kim. I own and manage American Made Apparel, which is a Denver-based cut and sew factory. I would say tariffs, for the most part, have been, for me, in the immediate realm, more detrimental because I source a lot of my materials, threads, and notions from China. There's a lot more inquiries, and possibly I could get more business from it. But for now, I'm especially seeing a downturn as far as profit margin because my costs have gone up as well.
I'm Chris Pence, and I'm the co-founder and president of Hand Ceramics in Burlington, North Carolina. We work with a handful of restaurants and hotels in Canada currently, or have been. Unfortunately, the Canadian business that we have has completely gone away, and the Canadian companies that we've been working with for many years are no longer interested in buying our products solely because we're an American company.
A lot of our markets have been impacted by cuts to USDA grants that used to allow farmers to sell to local institutions, hospitals, schools, that used to incentivize those institutions to buy locally. And so it's been 4 months of just one thing after the other.
I do feel like it's going to cause us to get more inquiries that potentially will land bigger accounts in the future. They do affect my costs initially, but I'm hoping that in the long run, people will realize keeping manufacturing in the U.S. will actually be a better thing for the long run, and also for them to be able to offer an American-made line.
I want the wines to be fairly priced to consumers in the end. And so what will happen is farmers will take a hit, producers will take a hit, I will take a hit. and then, consumers will see higher prices.
These are supply chains that take many, many years to create relationships. These are people's jobs. Some of the impacts for us have been that we've had to reduce some of our workforce, and these are people who've worked for me for many years. And these are real life impacts. These are real impacts to me, to my family, and to my community that I feel need to be really considered when making these kinds of sweeping changes.
For more on the impact of the ongoing trade war, I'm joined by Aaron McLaughlin, senior economist at the Conference Board. That's a nonprofit research organization whose members include over 1,000 public and private companies. Aaron, welcome to the NewsHour. I just want to begin with your reaction to what we saw today, this turbulent day in both global markets and here in the U.S. What's the headline to you out of all of this? What's your takeaway?
Well, it's the word that everybody keeps using, which is uncertainty. And many of your small businesses sound very similar to our members, which are mostly medium and large companies, as you said, public and private. They are really struggling with how to plan because most companies plan their supply chains, their capital infrastructure, their investment years in advance. So such a quick change, such a dramatic change, leads them to wonder how they should react.
I want to ask you more about those businesses in a moment, but also the sensitivity of the markets in this moment, spiking as they did after a rumor of a 90-day pause on tariffs, dropping back down again. What does that say to you about how investors are looking at this moment?
Well, it is very interesting. I believe we had an 8% swing today, even though we started and closed the market during the day at about the same rate or at the same level. And so clearly markets are looking for a pause because that's when we saw the market swing up. And that, per your own reporting just now, a pause does not seem likely to happen.
So as you speak to these business leaders who are members of your organization, do you get a sense from them there's a decision about how to move forward in this moment? Are retailers, for example, certain they'll have to raise prices and pass that on to consumers? Are they waiting to see if the tariffs get rolled back? How are they making decisions right now?
I think a lot of business leaders are sort of really just taking a beat to decide what happens because some of them have built up inventories, but for many industries, you cannot build up a lot of inventories in advance. They have more just-in-time supply chain operations. So I think for a lot of leaders, they're waiting to see what happened. Earlier in this, administration put the tariffs on imported goods from Mexico and Canada and then withdrew them. And so I think there has been some hope that perhaps we would see some alleviation of the tariffs. But as each day goes by, sort of the fact that they could remain in place seems to be more likely.
And is it just the tariffs in this moment that's fueling that uncertainty? Are there other policies or unknowns in the equation that they're viewing that's making them sort of hesitant to take action in the moment?
That's a great question. I think besides the actual tariffs, it is the consumer uncertainty. So consumers make up 70% of our economy here in the US, and a lot of our spending, our success as an economy is based on consumer confidence. And at the Conference Board, we have a very well-regarded leading economic indicator where we measure confidence of the consumer, and their expectations within that index dropped to its lowest point in March in 12 years. And so if businesses feel that consumers are going to pull back their spending, that also gives them a lot of hesitance because their companies, especially if they're publicly traded, their value is coming down. And at the same time, they can't be sure that they're going to have the sales and the profits that they have in the future that they have in the past.
Aaron, I know your expertise in particular lies around process of building factories and infrastructure. We know much of the justification of these tariffs is that they will do exactly that they can reshore jobs, that they can drive American manufacturing. What is your view on the prospects and the likelihood of that?
There's really 4 strong impediments. I do think onshoring is beneficial when it's targeted. And many economists feel the same way. What we're seeing with these broad tariffs is that it's not a targeted strategy from our policymakers. However, when it's targeted and we're able to onshore for national security, for healthcare security, that is certainly beneficial. But building a factory and reshoring or onshoring your supply chain takes anywhere between 3 and 10 years and is expensive. And also you need the qualified labor to work in these facilities. So these are not business planning activities that can take place within weeks or even months.
I know in addition to tracking consumer confidence, the Conference Board also tracks CEO confidence, their perceptions of the current and expected business conditions. Where does that sit right now? And given the president's comments that these tariffs could be permanent or they could be negotiated, where do you see that confidence going if the tariffs continue and the trade war ramps up?
Right. Now, all of our indexes are a bit backwards looking, not forwards looking. Our CEO confidence after the new president took office remained very high due to excitements over deregulation and continuous tax cuts. But I believe confidence has certainly come down quite a bit. And that is a quarterly index that we take we do expect the next one to show a significant drop.
That is Erin McLaughlin, senior economist at the Conference Board, joining us tonight. Erin, thank you so much for your time and insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We start the day's other headlines with a surprise statement from President Trump that the U.S. will engage in direct, high-level talks with Iran. But tonight, there is no confirmation from Tehran. Seated alongside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump said the talks, which he claimed will occur Saturday, would try to reach a, quote, stronger agreement than the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Mr. Trump withdrew the U.S. from that deal in his first term. The president warned of consequences if talks fail, and he would not rule out military confrontation.
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
So is that a yes?
You know, it's not a complicated formula. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is.
Netanyahu's visit to meet with President Trump comes as a wave of Israeli airstrikes across Gaza killed more than 30 people, according to health officials. Outside a hospital in southern Gaza, a strike killed a local reporter and wounded 6 more journalists. The Israeli military said it was targeting a Hamas militant posing as a journalist. Meantime, Israel has expanded more of its military buffer zone inside Gaza, doubling its size in recent weeks. Israel now controls more than 50% of the territory. In Myanmar, the death toll from the devastating March earthquake has climbed past 3,600 people. Rescue efforts are giving way to relief and recovery operations as hope for survivors fades. People across the country cleared mounds of debris today. World powers, including China, sent new emergency aid this weekend for survivors. The U.S. has pledged $9 million of relief so far, but relief efforts have been notably absent. As PBS News was first to report, the Trump administration last week notified the 3-person disaster team from USAID of their terminations while they were on the ground in Myanmar. The U.S. Supreme Court has temporarily paused a midnight deadline tonight that the Trump administration faced to bring home a man they deported by mistake. The administration admitted that Kilmar Abrego Garcia of Maryland should not have been sent to a maximum security prison in El Salvador. A judge's order from 2019 prohibited such a move. But the administration also argued it had no way to get him back because Garcia, who they accuse of MS-13 gang ties, is no longer in U.S. custody. Garcia's lawyers have until tomorrow afternoon to respond. A days-long downpour has finally let up across the southern U.S., but it sent some rivers overflowing to near-record levels, posing serious flood threats, especially across Kentucky. In the state capital of Frankfort today, the Kentucky River was so swollen that bridges just barely cleared the waterline. Officials say it crested less than a foot shy of a record. The murky floodwaters inundated businesses downtown and forced residents to abandon their belongings and flee their homes.
You're used to seeing storms last a couple days, if it's a bad storm, a day or two, but this was 6 straight days of heavy torrential downpour. And again, with already saturated ground, there's just nowhere for it to go. And so it's got to go up. And it did.
Last week's storms dumped heavy rain from Texas up to Ohio, and in some places spawned devastating tornadoes. At least 20 people have been killed. 10 of them were in Tennessee alone. And a passing of note, actor Jay North has died. As a young boy, he starred as the overall-wearing, mischief-making Dennis the Menace on TV.
Whoops! You got your foot in the paint, Mr. Wilson!
North was just 6 years old when he landed the role of Dennis Mitchell, the well-intentioned troublemaker whose antics especially tested the patience of his next-door neighbor, George Wilson. The sitcom ran for 4 seasons. North would go on to appear in several other TV shows and feature films, but he struggled with being typecast. He talked openly throughout his career about the challenges that come with being a child star. North died Sunday after a battle with colon cancer. He was 73 years old. Still to come on the NewsHour, Tamara Keith and Amy Walter break down the latest political headlines. Actor Noah Wyle discusses The Pit, the new hospital drama receiving widespread acclaim. And Washington Capitol star Alex Ovechkin becomes the NHL's all-time leading goal scorer.
This is the PBS NewsHour from the David M. Rubenstein Studio at WETA in Washington, and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
We return now to our coverage of Taiwan and the threats it faces from China. We reported last week about the Taiwanese military's efforts to modernize and prepare for a Chinese invasion or blockade.
Tonight, Nick Schifrin reports on how Taiwan's government wants the island and its citizens to become more resilient and more ready for what the government is increasingly willing to warn might be coming. It's part 2 of our series, Taiwan, Risk and Resistance.
It begins with a manufactured military crisis. Then a manipulated broadcast. Citizens become collaborators. Society collapses into chaos.
Behind me, we see many American citizens of Taiwanese heritage in line for evacuation.
And then invasion. It's a TV series called Zero Day, as in the day China takes over Taiwan.
When we're facing an authoritarian invasion, everyone should set aside their differences in identity and come together to protect the way of life we cherish.
Cheng Sin-mei is Zero Day's showrunner. The series was supported by Taiwan's government, which allowed filming in the president's house and on a Navy warship. The National Security Council helped provide the plot, so it's in part a government attempt to wake Taiwan up.
We want everyone to understand that war is already happening in Taiwan. With fake news, misinformation, and even severed underwater cables, these are all signs that war is getting closer.
It's sensitive to depict that war on Taiwanese TV. More than half the crew asked to stay anonymous, fearing Chinese retribution. But the threat and the willingness to call it out is rising.
The fact is, the really dangerous things is not the movie. The real dangerous things is China.
We're not trying to divide Taiwan. Instead, we want to unite them. We all need to protect the safety of this land and the way of life we have here. And that way of life is a free, democratic one.
Since the inauguration of President Lai Ching-te, Taipei has been much more willing to call out China's threat to Taiwan's democracy. And Lai has insisted civilians prepare for war. Part of those preparations, training exercises like this, simulating a missile strike. Taiwan has long prepared for natural disasters, but now that preparation is tied to resisting Chinese influence or invasion.
We hope Taiwan's society can be resilient. We should rely not on the enemy not coming, but on our own readiness to receive him.
We don't want to be isolated by China.
Liu Shifeng is Taiwan's interior minister.
If the kind of gray area attack by China or by some other enemy happen, we have to have a well preparedness.
You mean if there is some kind of attack from Beijing or another adversary, you'll be ready for it?
We hope so.
Taipei is planning to stockpile blood, food, even nationalize buses and taxis if they have to transport soldiers. And they're creating some 80,000 shelters, this one in the basement of a metro station. The metro manager and the deputy interior minister show us a site that can withstand a 500-pound bomb and hold 12,000 people with emergency power, water, and cell reception. They say the better they can prepare, the longer they can hold out.
Taiwan is preparing for large-scale earthquakes, tsunamis, and war at the same time. Missile attacks or enemy air raids, that's when this space would be opened.
Are you trying to scare people? Are you trying
Scare?
are you
Why?
trying to motivate people?
We try to motivate them. We don't want to scare them. I just want to tell them it will be happen, but we didn't know when or why. But we still have to be well prepared.
And of course, that makes it more challenging for China or anyone to execute what they want to do.
That's right.
But Taiwan's financial systems, energy, and communications are vulnerable to Chinese blockade and cyber attack. And critics worry Taiwan isn't doing enough to prepare for social and economic disruption. There are also internal divisions. Last week's drills were designed in part to win over cities led by the opposition party that's accused the government of scare tactics. Do you think people still think of this as warmongering?
Well, in Taiwan, we have a many opposition party. We have to tell them, you have to face it. We have to be prepared.
Some Taiwanese are concerned the island isn't prepared, so they're getting ready themselves. On a recent Saturday afternoon, young men practiced clearing a building from would-be invaders. They're civilian volunteers. Their guns fire plastic. Their tactics are basic. But these weekend warriors believe the island's future is at risk. And they doubt the military can protect them. Do you think there will be war?
I think so, yes. I think there's a high chance that there will be a war.
This active duty soldier asked we keep him anonymous. He leads this team because he says the military needs help. Do you think Taiwan is ready for war?
Personally, I don't think so. Because Taiwan hasn't fought a war for 70 or 80 years, I think what we lack is experience.
All Taiwanese men serve compulsory military service, and on paper, Taiwan's reserves appear large. But these men say military training is insufficient. So they do it themselves. They practice a shootout and tend to the wounded. They call themselves a band of brothers, but acknowledge the family isn't large enough.
Many young people today are reluctant to join the armed forces. There's also a general lack of awareness among civilians about the importance of national defense.
That's 33-year-old Mason, a former Army engineer lieutenant. He, too, fears Taiwan is not ready. Is the military doing enough to prepare for an invasion?
It's still not enough. If we can improve the overall defense skills of the general public, it will certainly be helpful to the military during times of war.
Understanding the stakes is crucial. If we consider the political consequences of Taiwan going to war, losing the war, losing its sovereignty, we'd be risking one of our most valuable assets, our democracy.
And so they train, knowing the peril, knowing what's at stake. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin in Taipei, Taiwan.
Let's delve further now into the political fallout from President Trump's tariffs and his decision to threaten China with even more penalties. On that and other news we're watching this week, we're joined now by Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter and Tamara Keith of NPR. Much to discuss on this Monday.
Yes.
Let's start with these tariffs, shall we? Because, Amy, President Trump has described these tariffs as medicine that the country needs. How sustainable is that framing politically? if economic indicators worsen?
That's right. So the place we have to look first is Congress, because actually, if there is anybody or anything that can rein in the president on these tariff decisions, it is Congress. They have the constitutional ability to do so. Will they do it politically? No, for this reason. If you are in Congress right now, especially you're a House member, you have been in Congress, you've been watching Donald Trump since 2016, what have you noticed? You've noticed that he has defied political gravity time and time again. And those Republicans who stepped out and said, oh, I don't think this is going to work out, or who criticized the president on things like Access Hollywood or January 6th or others, found themselves getting ahead of their skis. And the president, weeks or months later, ends up being fine. The risk that many of these members find themselves is that either one, they get out now, try to push back on the president. That doesn't succeed. He remembers this and punishes you. Your voters in your district who are Republicans remember this and punish you. And there's also the chance that things do end up working out okay, that there is not the economic disaster that many have been forecasting. One Republican strategist said this to me today. He said there are millions of reasons for Republicans to blink, but none of them are better than just giving this time. So I think House Republicans especially are willing to give the president political time.
And Tam, on the underlying strategy, I mean, senior Trump officials were on the Sunday shows yesterday. You had Howard Lutnick, the billionaire commerce secretary, striking an aggressive note saying that tariffs are here to stay. Two other cabinet members were on other Sunday shows saying that, oh, no, these can be negotiated. President Trump in the Oval Office today said both things can be true. They can be permanent and they can be negotiated. How much of this is a structured strategy, and how much of this is just the administration reacting to real-time events on the ground?
Well, so as we know, President Trump announced this on Wednesday. Even based on public statements, we know that a decision had not been finalized as of Tuesday afternoon. So this was not a well-planned rollout. Since then, there's been a lot of reacting. But there are a couple of underlying and also conflicting messages. One is this idea that President Trump is this great deal maker and somehow he's going to get deals. Today, he put more of that out into the bloodstream. He, had Prime Minister Netanyahu in the Oval Office and talked about the things that Netanyahu was going to do for the United States. He's talking to Japan and other countries, and everybody wants a deal. Then at the same time, he is also saying that he doesn't want to give time for deals to take place. He wants these tariffs in place now. He's saying that the U.S., this is a great opportunity for the U.S. to reset the table on the global economy and global trade, and that it's going to be painful, but he's the man who can take the pain. Now, there's pain to go around. 62% of Americans have some money in the stock market, either directly or indirectly. And I think that's sort of the political challenge that the president faces. Because he's taking all the positions, it's not clear exactly where this is going. It's not clear to the markets where this is going. And so far, there hasn't been sort of a moment where the president sits down with the American people and says, okay, this is our policy. There are going to be sacrifices. I understand that. You need to understand that. We all need to come together as Americans and accept these sacrifices, which in theory is what would have to happen for him to weather what could be months or years of turmoil.
Well, and where voters are on this, you can see that what they think of as the economy is what stuff costs.
Yes.
Now, what the president and many others think about the economy is just structurally what the economy is and how that is going to be upended by these tariffs. We're going to bring in a new sort of order of things that will be very different from what we've had since the end of World War II. But for voters, that is not what many of them actually want to see from the economy. They want to see the price of things go down.
Well, let's shift our focus to what happened on Saturday, because we saw coast-to-coast opposition to President Trump's second term with more than 1,300 events across the country, organized largely by Democratic activists. Tam, are these hands-off protests, that's what they were called, hands-off, You got that. You've got Senator Booker's marathon speech. Are these really early signs of an activated Democratic base, or are these mostly episodic expressions of frustration?
These are definitely expressions of frustration, but it could also be the seeds of something more. What happens when you have big events like this is people who are angry and frustrated realize they are not alone in being angry and frustrated. There are lots of people around them. Sometimes these sorts of events cause people to then decide to run for office or to volunteer for people who are running for office. It can, or build connections. It can be the seeds of something. And we've certainly seen that in the past. But are these rallies, are these protests, is Cory Booker's long talk on the record-breaking talk.
Can't be called a filibuster.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting hung up on the filibuster thing. Long talk on the Senate floor. Is that all a sign that Democrats are no longer in the wilderness? They have figured out their messenger and their message? No, not at all. They still have a lot to figure out. If you looked at the signs, they didn't all say the same thing. And that's often the case, especially with Democrats and protests. But certainly Democrats have to take some solace in the fact that people are willing to go out of their homes and get together in the streets. And that shows that people are not just completely depressed, that energy still exists. But I don't know that the party has figured out how to harness that.
No, and even if you look at, say, Wisconsin, where Democrats had great success in that Supreme Court race, even as the Democratic candidate there won by 10 points, opinions of the Democratic Party in the state are much more negative than even opinions of Donald Trump. So voters are coming out and voting for the Democratic candidate or against the Republican, despite the fact that they really don't think any better of Democrats. So in the short term, yes, if you're the Democratic Party now, you say the energy that's coming from the anti-Trump, the anti-Trump energy could be enough to take us where we need to go in the midterm elections to flip the House. And that's where that would go. It doesn't mean that they have solved all of their problems going into 2028 and who they are and what they stand for.
Amy, you answered my question before I asked it, so Sam, I'll put it to you.
It's the mind meld thing.
There you go, because the question is, how do Democrats thread this needle between resistance and persuasion? Because resistance, as Democrats saw, is not enough. It's not enough to name and shame Donald Trump. That doesn't work. How do they persuade those voters who, as Amy points out, they have issues with Donald Trump, but they don't see Democrats as the ones necessarily providing the answers?
Right, and we saw that Democrats really were just resisting Trump. In 2017, when there were big rallies in the street, they were anti-Trump rallies. That was an anti-Trump backlash in 2018 with those midterms. In terms of harnessing this into something that they are also, that the party, I think the distinction is between voters and the party, because the party does have a really bad name, even with Democratic voters.
Yeah, and I do think a lot of this will center around the economy. I mean, we are now talking about nothing but the state of the economy. This is an opportunity. Democrats don't like what they're seeing from Donald Trump to say, this is who we are and this is what our economic vision is. We know what Donald Trump's is.
The Nancy Pelosi approach.
There we go.
All right. Amy Walter and Tamara Keith, thanks to you both.
You're welcome.
The new medical drama, The Pit, streaming on Max, has its season finale this Thursday. The show tackles urgent issues like the impact of gun violence, hospital staffing shortages, and the lasting effects of the pandemic, earning praise from both audiences and critics for its raw, realistic portrayal of life inside American hospitals. I spoke with Noah Wyle, who executive produces and stars in The Pit for our arts and culture series, Canvas. Noah Wyle, welcome to the NewsHour.
Thank you very much for having me.
The Pit plays out over the course of a single shift inside the emergency department at Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Center, with each episode representing a single hour on the job. What's remarkable about this show is nearly every moment plays out on the ER floor, and that format really adds to the urgency. What was the creative intention behind that approach?
To give that exact desired effect. We wanted to come up with a device that felt intimate and created a sense of tension, analogous to doing kind of a ride along with a police officer in the backseat of a cruiser, or being embedded with a combat unit as a journalist.
What's going on?
We were discussing the options for treating your son.
He already looks better.
He is not. And by refusing the spinal tap, we don't know how to help him.
You can turn your head, but you can't really leave. And you're going to be sort of stuck witnessing everything in real time while these practitioners go about their duties, and get a sense of the aggregate toll that a day can take on a practitioner, and extrapolate that over decades a career can take.
I understand it was during the pandemic where, as you described it, you were feeling pretty useless, that you decided to embark upon this project. Is that right? Tell me about that.
I wasn't working. Nobody was working. And I get a lot of my sense of balance from going to work every day and being creative and working with creative people and telling stories. And I didn't realize how much I really needed that until I didn't have an opportunity to do it. And at that same time, I was getting a lot of attention or mail from first responders who were, thanking me for inspiring them to go into a career in medicine, or thanking me for continually keeping them inspired. And I was sort of overwhelmed by that. I was sort of overwhelmed by old work having resonance and poignancy in a way that I didn't feel like I was able to contribute anymore. And so I thought, maybe there's another story to tell here that's more contemporary, that reflects what these guys are going through now. And that began the conversation that got us where we are here.
Is it true that you shoot The Pit hundreds of feet away from where you shot ER on the same Warner Brothers lot?
Feels like farther than 100 feet. Feels like a million miles and a million years and about 25 pounds. But yeah, geographically, it couldn't be closer.
How does the experience of filming the first season of The Pit compare to filming the first season of ER?
Well, the difference is I'm not 22 anymore, doing this for the first time. I'm 53, doing it for another time. And I'm watching all these young performers come in and have their John Carter experience. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing to just have the perspective of longevity and to be able to be a resource to them.
Yellow, we're good. How did you do that?
Bubble innovation. You gave the compression off all the air bubbles up more than one way to tube a cat.
But mostly just be, kind of a good team leader, cheerleader, player, coach, and friend, and collaborator.
This place will break your heart. But it is also full of miracles, and that is a testament to all of you coming together and doing what we do best.
The character you portray on The Pit, Dr. Robbie, he is really the calm, steady, empathetic center of chaos, even as he battles his own internal struggles. How do you go about crafting that character and ensuring that the depth really comes through?
Well, this is a different animal entirely than usually a normal working experience. Telling a story in real time and shooting in real time affords you a lot of interesting opportunities. Oftentimes you're shooting out of sequence and you have to remember where you were and where you want to be in a certain moment. Shooting in sequence allows every moment to build on each other. Big open set, no marks on the floor, 2 cameras, no dolly track, no lights, no flags, no C-stands. Everything's preset. So we come in and we rehearse and then we shoot, and we have a freedom to move that I've never experienced before working with a camera. So it feels more like doing a play. It feels very live. On ER, it was a very egalitarian set. There was no foreground, background, cast, crew. We were just a sense of company trying to go and do really good, hard work. And that's what I wanted to build this time around too. And I think we were really successful on that front.
And the thing that sets The Pit apart from other medical dramas is the way medicine is practiced on the show. I mean, the authenticity is unmatched. How do you go about scripting a show like this?
Well, we're in the process of writing season 2 now, and the process begins with a lot of interviews, talking to experts from every vector of the healthcare system. We talk to people that specifically help practitioners get back their medical degrees after they've gone on a road of recovery for a drug and alcohol substance abuse problem. We've talked to people that deal in human trafficking, people that deal with ICE and immigration and how that's going to affect emergency rooms, which are no longer considered safe spaces, sanctuary spaces. And the last question we ask of these people is, what do you want to see on TV? You know, what's not on TV that needs to be from your perspective? And we write all the talky stuff, and then we give it to the doctors and say, how would this work? And then they write all the technical mumbo jumbo, what the procedures are and who would be doing what. And we take that and marry it together and somehow end up with a show.
What do you think it says about the times in which we live that the Pit is finding so much success, almost entirely by word of mouth?
Well, it's funny. I'm in New York right now, and I went to go see George Clooney in Good Night and Good Luck last night. And I got a chance to see him afterwards, and he was being very congratulatory about my show, and I was being very congratulatory about his show. And we both acknowledged that if the election had gone the other way, we would be in very different shows. Right now, the Pit is standing out as almost a lighthouse, reminding everybody of the hard work that these experts and practitioners are doing, reminding of the heroism of these everyday walk of life individuals who work in the service industry.
I'm gonna go check out triage. We'll save a spot for you.
Go look at the wheelchair.
Hey, Ahmad, what number are we up to?
85 patients so far.
Similarly, George is doing a show about Edward R. Murrow, and the speeches that he's making couldn't feel more contemporary relevant today. And him standing there center stage and delivering them to an American audience 8 times a week is an act of protest. Sometimes stars align to reframe what you're doing in a totally different context than what you even imagined it would be. I think that everybody's feeling a sense of hopelessness and feeling really scared. And it seems like things that we used to be able to rely on are crumbling before our very eyes. And then you turn on a show like The Pit and you go, oh, okay, well, at least there's still smart people out there who are dedicated, that are helping those who can't help themselves or are finding that it's really hard to get resources available to them.
Noah Wyle is the star and executive producer of The Pit, streaming now on Max. Thanks so much for your time.
Entirely my pleasure. Thank you.
In an historic moment for hockey yesterday, Washington Capitals star Alex Ovechkin surpassed Wayne Gretzky's all-time record for most career goals. In a game against the New York Islanders, Ovechkin scored his 895th goal, a record once thought unbreakable.
Ovechkin fires! Score! The chasing days are done!
With his trademark shot from the spot on the ice known as his office, 39-year-old Alex Ovechkin officially cemented himself as the NHL's all-time leading scorer. The goal broke one of the sport's legendary records, held by Hall of Famer Wayne Gretzky for 31 years. Gretzky was in New York to witness it and congratulated Ovechkin on the ice.
I can tell you firsthand, I know how hard it is to get to 894. 895 is pretty special. Alex, I said I'd be the first guy to shake your hand when you broke the record. And I wore this pin.
The Russian-born Ovechkin made his NHL debut with the Washington Capitals in 2005 and has been the leader of the team ever since, eventually becoming captain. He scored 50 or more goals for 9 seasons and was named one of the top 100 NHL players of all time in 2017. He's also been named League MVP 3 separate times in 2008, 2009, and 2013. After Sunday's game, Ovechkin said he was still processing the moment.
When I was tying the record, I still can't believe it. And, you know, it was so emotional. It was such a great night, but this is something crazy. I just said I'm probably going to need a couple more days or maybe a couple weeks to realize what does it mean to be number one. But all I can say, I'm very proud.
For more now on Ovechkin and this record-breaking achievement, I'm joined by Joe Beninati, who's been doing play-by-play announcing for the Capitals on the Monumental Sports Network. Joe, welcome to the NewsHour. Thanks for joining us.
Now, thank you for the invitation. What could we be talking about? I'm not sure exactly what the subject matter is. Holy smokes, the last 3-4 days have been phenomenal.
Holy smokes, indeed. Joe, this is a record that stood for over 30 years before Ovechkin broke it this weekend. Just put it into perspective for us. Where does this put Ovi in the pantheon of greats?
Well, the procession, since 1917, Amna, when the NHL first began, there's only been 10 people all time to have the title of all-time goal-scoring leader. And the procession from Rocket Richard to Gordie Howe to Wayne Gretzky to Alex Ovechkin, I get the shivers just thinking about it, because you are speaking of a pantheon of all-time greats. And most people will tell you that Wayne Gretzky is the greatest hockey player to ever live. Mario Lemieux, Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr might also suggest that they earned that title. We're not saying that Alex is the greatest player of all time, but I think genuinely you can call him the greatest goal scorer of all time. With the achievements yesterday on Long Island, this is a player who has done it for 20 years and done it in such a way that he has endeared himself to hockey fans worldwide.
Joe, what about for you to be there in that moment, to make that call we all just saw there? What was that like for you in the moment?
I'm still shaking. It's pure adrenaline. And as a professional, you think about these moments, and this is a player and this is a hockey team, an organization that's treated me to these types of moments. Alex for 20 years, the organization going back 30 years. I'm used to it, but you can't be conditioned for something like the last 3-4 days. Friday at Capital One Arena was magnetic. It was as close to Stanley Cup final level buzz as you can get, without the apprehension, without the fear of losing. It was a party that was there specifically to see a player get his crowning achievement. And he almost did it in one night. And then to do what he did on Long Island on Sunday in front of so many Capitals fans who made their way to New York, and so many New York hockey fans who recognized the greatness that they were seeing unfold before them. They treated themselves, the Islanders, as hosts, obviously stopping the game for almost 25 minutes to celebrate this man's achievement. Just a tip of the cap to them, a job extremely well done. But for me, I don't know that I will be treated to more exhilarating moments than that. And as a professional, what you're conditioned to try and do is stay in that moment, deliver it with an adrenaline rush, do it succinctly, and get out of the way. And for the most part, I hope we did it well.
You have watched Ovechkin over all of those years as well. This is a man who's 39 years old in a league where the average player is 27. He missed a lot of games this year because of a broken leg. And as our resident hockey guru and Cap superfan, our colleague Morgan Till tells me to, he's not built like a classic goal scorer. He's built more like a linebacker. How was Ovechkin able to do what so many couldn't for so long?
Now, this isn't a dainty hockey player by any stretch. This is a middle linebacker on skates. I've heard him referred to as a Mack truck on skates. And for him to do what he's done over the last 20 years, more than anything, and I've said this from time to time, maybe the greatest ability of superstar athletes is availability. He's been available 95% of the time that he could have laced them up for the Capitals. And this is playing through an assortment of injuries. In his younger days, he'd flex them away without even thinking about it in his 20s and early 30s. Now that he's pushing 40 years of age, those injuries linger a little bit longer, and yet still he fights through them until you get an episode like you did in November where he breaks his leg in Salt Lake City. And Amna, were it not for that injury, at age 39, he could conceivably, with all these young Tigers running around on the ice, he could conceivably be leading the league in goals again had he not missed those 40 days, had he not missed those 16 games. He is having a truly remarkable season when it comes to goals per games played. It's through the roof at 39. Think of it.
He's been a joy to watch. It's a joy to listen to you as you watch him as well. That is Joe Beninati, the voice of the Washington Capitals on the Monumental Sports Network. Joe, thank you so much. Really a pleasure to talk to you.
Amna, this was great. Anytime.
There's a lot more online, including a look at why the National Weather Service is halting its foreign language forecasts as severe weather bears down on large portions of the U.S. That's at pbs.org/newshour.
And that is the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. For all of us here at the PBS NewsHour, thanks for spending part of your evening with us.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by friends of the NewsHour, including Robert Kaplan and Kathy and Paul Anderson.
Cunard is a proud supporter of public television. On a voyage with Cunard, the world awaits. A world of flavor, diverse destinations, and immersive experiences. A world of leisure and British style. All with Cunard's White Star service.
In 1995, two friends set out to make wireless coverage accessible to all. With no long-term contracts, nationwide coverage, and 100% US-based customer support. Consumer Cellular. Freedom calls.
The John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. More information at macfound.org. And with the ongoing support of these institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.